Hello, everybody, and welcome to DM Writer's Room, a show where we demystify the DMing process, usually by coming up with monsters, magic items, and adventures live with you. Now, sometimes we branch off into other things. We have worked together on a hack for Morkborg before. For those of you who don't know, a hack is when you take a game system that already exists and you basically use that framework to create something new, inspired by systems like Powered by the Apocalypse and what's the Blades in the Dark? There's a Blades in...
Forged in the Dark.
Wow, good pull. Yeah, Forged in the Dark. This time, I am a little unaware of what we are doing. Only Spencer knows what today's DM Writer's Room is because he prearranged that he had it covered, which is always a huge relief because normally, just in case you didn't know, about 10 minutes before this call starts, we get on the call together and we go, what are we talking about? I forgot that it was today. And we just sprint in a circle until we come up with something. So I guess I will open the floor to you, Spencer. What are we doing?
So, this all started when I watched a little old movie called Nosferatu. And no, not the one made in 1922.
Bad
Instead,
start.
the film that came out like 3 weeks ago. If you're not into spoilers, I am going to be saying some minor spoilers for Nosferatu. But if I'm being super real, I don't remember a lot of what happened in Nosferatu, so it's not going to be too bad. But if you're like really against it, tune out for the next like minute or two. So
I can't.
In the
I
film,
haven't seen Nosferatu yet, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, you said that you watched like 3 movies in the last year, so it's fine if I spoil some Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Also, it's just Dracula. It's just Dracula
It's
again.
just Dracula.
So in the new movie Nosferatu, Nosferatu is the villain. He's a Dracula.
Yeah, of course.
And he's horny for a girl. Typical Dracula stuff. But the story itself follows a few different POVs. There's a primary heroic force, which is made up of like a German noble, a realtor, and the girl that Nosferatu's horny for.
Damn, so Dracula.
It's Dracula.
Okay.
It's just Dracula. So I'm really not spoiling a lot. But
Yes.
the main heroic force is those three, along with a doctor and a madman doctor.
Oh, good.
That's the crew. There's also a secondary force that sort of shows up, who are on a ship that Nosferatu is on.
Yeah.
And the people on the ship try and kill Nosferatu. Shit does not work, obviously. And the doctor and crazy doctor are also part of a secondary, like a tertiary force that I'm going to call research crew.
Okay.
It's all these plot threads leading to this one inevitable conclusion. My idea is inspired by that and sort of the survivor mechanic of D&D from what is it? Von Richten's Guide.
Yep, Von Richten Guide.
So my thought is everybody comes with this main idea of their character, their heroic character. This is like the realtor, the doctor, the lady that Nosferatu's horny for, etc.
Great.
But the DM or keeper or whatever Nosferatu, whatever you want to call them, has developed this adventure with the idea that there are going to be secondary and tertiary characters that they will also inhabit that do things like research, that do things like try and kill Nosferatu, even though that shit's not going to ever work, obviously. And then they go to their primary heroic driving force. So it's splitting up an adventure narrative into
You've been on this whip for a while. You like the idea of getting to play like an entire cast of characters instead of having to play one person for 2 years.
Yeah, and I was struck by divine inspiration watching Nosferatu to be like, I think we can make a real system out of this.
All right, so we're breaching into full system creation, which we've done before. We do one-page RPGs. We actually this is true. So last Thanksgiving we put up on itch.io a while ago. If you want to play a turkey-tinged game of vengeance where you throw eggs at each other to solve it, that was a fun one. And we just finished our first official draft of the Resonance RPG, which we came up with on DM Writer's Room, and that was pretty exciting.
Thanks.
So thankfully we have been sort of shadow boxing. And then before this, we did, what was it called? Spirit and Stone. So we that was a Powered by the Apocalypse style game. So we've been in this neck of the woods before. Okay, so our goal then is to make a system that is about, or pitch the core idea of a system that is a group of people specifically split into characters, split into teams, and you're trying to simultaneously build on each of their narratives. And so when these secondary storylines end, the main storyline like gains some grand benefit.
Yeah, I think they gain a grand benefit. They get to learn the story in a way that doesn't feel like these characters have to go from point A to point B to point C. Instead, the information can be gathered elsewhere. There's a feeling of helplessness, whereas in the heroic characters, maybe you're having that more driven action. So it helps delineate a little bit.
It kind of incentivizes you to care about doomed things, because it's like you still get a benefit out of it, right? There is still a reason to do this doomed thing. I think that's kind of fun. So you would give the opportunity, basically. So it sounds like at the end of each like big arc where secondary things and tertiary things happen, and then the primary thing happens, and then at the start of the next arc the players start to think about like what these other things are. It's very funny to think about like the primary arc ends in a big fight in like this steeple, and they're trying to kill Dracula, and then Dracula smashes through the stained glass window and escapes, and somebody's like, but wait, that priest goes and starts a secret organization, and then you follow them for a little while. Okay, that's interesting. I like that. So the party basically like comes up with new B plots at each. So it's a game where you have an A plot, and then every time you hit a big milestone, the party gets to invent B and C plots. Okay. All right, I could see it.
Very fun.
It's making me think of a lot of things. It's making me, number one, I think you nailed the survivor mechanics in Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. So for those of you who don't know, let me swing over here and grab that book. It's not too terrible. Get out of my way.
Well, Ethan's looking for that. 2 questions. Do we want to keep the like sailors on the ship setting, or are we expanding past that?
It's certainly expanding past that. That was one example of like a bruiser subcategory of character for plot versus like the researcher is the 2 doctors going to the sick hall and seeing what's going on.
Okay. The other question was, would we want to keep it almost in like a semi-isolated, to like not saying like putting it has to be, but like heavily advocating for a smaller area setting, so there's not like the chance for intervening, stuff like that?
I don't know. I'm not opposed to that necessarily, but I think that we can leave it open, because then it could be like the FBI subplot. They are intervening, even though this is happening. They're going to be thwarted, obviously. They're not the heroic characters, but...
Yeah, it's sort of it's making me think of like Call of Cthulhu, where it's like there is a core system and it's very easy to adapt it in time to like cover other time periods. I do have to say, we're usually pretty no downers here, but it's simply, I have no choice but to call something out. Spencer and I had a game a very long time ago that petered out very, very fast, but that we were all, I, and one of our friends was extremely excited for. Unfortunately, that friend has since passed away, so that adds a tinge of sorrow to it. But in opening Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, a page of notes from that game just fell out. No! And I was just struck by a flood of memories of us going to the domain of dread of Aslan, that giant desert with the great worms and stuff. Ugh. Memories. So the survivor mechanic in Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is one of our personal favorites. Spencer made a video about it 100 years ago because he wanted to fight for it, and fight for it he had to, if memory serves, in those comments. Basically, it gives you a way to, in a game like D&D, which is all about like heroic, epic fantasy, where you are the most powerful person in the room, to briefly play weak characters that are squishy and can very easily die, to frame up the horror of a scenario for your players to then roll in and save the day. And so you chose between playing an apprentice, a disciple, a sneak, or a squire. And you have little, basically monster stat blocks with very basic abilities, and then you get to pick survivor talents if you survive long enough to sort of start to accrue little extra abilities. So I think that is a really interesting basis to come from is this thought that we have a more complicated main system. It doesn't need to be like overly so. And then we have a simplified way to run these like B and C plots. So I guess my next big question, this is a huge question, whether you're making so just to catch everybody up on where we are, we're at like the 15-minute mark here. We are trying to make at least the bones of a system that focuses on letting the players play multiple groups of people. One that is very important to the plot, and others that are doing things that are important, just not as important. This is also a good solve for the player that inevitably is bored of their character after 10 sessions and is like, can I jump in a pit or something? Like, I'm tired of this paladin I came up with 3 months ago. So, what do you want it to feel like when people play this game? And this is something you should always ask yourself when you are writing adventures, when you're making monsters, anything. What do you want your players to be experiencing? Like, what do you want them to be feeling? Because you should be building up what you do based on that. Even something as simple as dice mechanics needs to take that into account, right? How often do you want your players to succeed on a dice roll directly relates to what kind of game it is. In a horror game, that number should be under 50%. In a heroic game, it should be over 50%. And in a kind of like gritty but realist game, it's probably like 50-50 odds that you succeed or fail. So did you have somewhere on this spectrum that you imagined this game being? Or maybe do our different groups sort of land different on that axis?
The different groups do land differently. So in the Nosferatu example, I sort of delineated the researchers, the bruisers, the hero cast. We can come up with other sections other than that, but for now we'll use that. The bruisers have the least chance of success, obviously. They are red shirts. Their intent is to die, to build suspense, and show the horror of the monster before the heroes get to see it. That's number one. Two is the researchers. I'd say they have a more 50-50 level of success. That's people that are investigating, looking for clues, finding answers. They're not going to find everything, but there's a good chance they're going to find a lot. And that's sort of the mystery section of this. And then the hero plot probably has a pretty good chance of success. I doubt that they're going to be super gritty.
I think this is probably going to be, if we wanted to base it off another system, I think this is a Forged in the Dark system. That is the one that
because they've already got the groups.
And they have the group set up, and one of the group options is like seeding into another gang, and sometimes you play as them briefly. Yeah. And so I think there is some connection there. It's a little different than this, so I think we will be making some structural changes. But if we wanted to do a hack, a jump off, that is a good place for it to come from, I think. But we certainly don't have to. So you're imagining one of these groups basically being the heroes. These are the people at the center of the conflict. This is your protagonists. They're having a great time. They're going to succeed over 50% of the time when they roll their dice. They're going to have a great time. The researchers, who are not necessarily in danger, but their odds of success are like closer to 50-50. They're doing important things that don't need to happen. And then the bruisers, which are this last line of defense, absolutely up shit creek most of the time, and they are probably going to fail. But if they succeed, the rewards are, like pretty fantastical. Okay. Yeah. I like it. I like it. I think
shout out
works.
To our chat. Carl Aviation, wow, this is so cool. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Carl.
This is basically a fever dream. James Hurst, the setting is the Vatican. Setting this story in the Vatican would be incredible. I think that could be that would be up there for me in terms of like where I would put something like this. So for sure.
Where I pictured it, there's a series that we watched. I didn't see all of it, but it was while you were here and Beth and Maddie were here, where it was the vampire, but vampires didn't exist in that universe. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Brain blasting.
Oh yeah, Midnight Mass.
Yes.
Yeah.
That setting definitely
fucking hit. Ripped, by the way.
Midnight Mass lost me for 42 minutes. I loved everything, but the actual end of the last episode is very good. There's like 15 minutes before the end that I was like, I don't get this. I was like, I don't
Mike
understand.
Flanagan for sure needs to work on his monologuing characters because it's boring as shit.
Yeah.
But everything else about that show ripped.
Okay, so then I think we need to divide up a little bit here. So another important thing, when you are creating dungeons, when you're creating games, whatever it is you're doing, divide and conquer. Also, let's take a moment. I feel the need, this has been bothering me online lately. Divide and conquer does not mean divide your forces to tackle one issue. It means the literal opposite of that. It means divide the enemy's forces and stay as one group. I see people goof that up all the time and it bothers me. So if I'm splitting this into a couple of sections, right? So what we really fundamentally have is moderate risk, moderate reward for the heroes, high risk, high reward for the bruisers, and low risk, low reward for the researchers, which I do think is great. Do we have any other? So if we make those our categories, right, then we can swap out heroes for, I'm going to pencil it over to protagonists, because if our goal is for this to be a system where you could run all kinds of stories, then you're not always going to be the heroes. You might be sometimes you're going to be Dracula, right? Sometimes you're going to want to be the bad guy, which is great. The bruiser, as you've put it, is high risk, high reward, like really dangerous. Is there any other way we can think of to put that has a little bit less, because bruiser is so like physically loaded, it is such a like very specific thing. I think that what I want to visualize now that we're talking about Blades in the Dark as inspiration, is I like the idea that this is a category and one of the sub groups is the bruisers. Take out something above your weight class. And I'm gonna write that down because I like that.
We could call it like grunts category, infantry.
It's more. I'm more concerned with the danger than less concerned with the people. Like I was thinking something like, obviously this would be for SEO bad, but if we're trying to talk about in a game system what it looks like for a group that is guaranteed to fail, but if they win, I'm like Suicide Squad, Pyrrhic. Right? These are the words that are like floating around in my head. Do we have something a little more general than Bruisers that focuses on that? Like, we are totally
one in 1,000?
The long shot?
Yeah, the long shot. I was thinking 1 in 1,000, the long shot.
Hail Mary.
I'm gonna write the long shot / Hail Mary. And I think that's great. So that is, you have, so each time you start a new arc, you have 3 operations going. You have the main operation, you have the long shot or the Hail Mary, and then you have, what about the researchers, right? What about low risk, not maybe low reward, but you know what I mean? These are the things where it's like they're probably not going to get like bludgeoned to death. They probably aren't going to get attacked by Dracula. They're sort of up to some
they'd be interacting with like the minions and like the Fallout.
Is it just straight up the B Squad, or did you imagine them as a little bit beefier than that? Because then it would be the protagonists, the long shot, and the B Squad.
I think B Squad is fine. We can definitely use that as a placeholder.
Fine is never a good sign, though.
No, I just don't have anything else.
B Squad support sidekicks. Aids.
Assistants.
Oh, assistants. Okay. B Squad, assistants. Okay. Did you imagine anything other than that? Or do you like this 3 categories? Like there's always these 3 things going.
I didn't think of anything else. I'm open to other ones. It was just the movie I was watching had those 3.
James has just dropped long shots. They bring knives to a gunfight. Researchers, a day late and $1 short. James,
yeah, hell
that's
yeah,
very,
brother.
very good.
Hell yeah.
James, I love that. That's hilarious. I love that. A day late and $1 short. Great. Okay, so we have these 3 sort of categories. So we have the long shot, the researcher. Yeah, the long shot, the project or the researchers, and then the protagonists. I think is very funny.
We could put the enemy. And it could be an interesting thing to have a section where you're the minions of the bad guy, or you're the people working against the protagonists, fleshing out that end of the story. I think that could be cool.
Yeah, so that's if we really wanted to make what is like a full holistic system. But so that to me, what that would be is at the start of every arc, you would get to play that scene where somebody stabs a dagger into a map of London, and then we sort of follow the adventure that comes after that. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's interesting. It would make this game a little bit more of a conversation and less of a I am going to prep and then you are going to play the game. So that's a pretty huge change. Is that one that we're interested in making? Do we like the idea of this being less I am the keeper, I have prepared an adventure, you all like interact with that? Or do we like it better as you guys see what happens and then we sort of move ahead? What's up?
I think there's one other way we could do it, and it makes it more of like us against you sort of thing, and we make we do the minions, but it's a role for the keeper to play as.
Oh, we gamify the keepers.
Yes.
Role.
I know Ethan's. I think we've talked about it a little, and Ethan's a little against that.
What do you mean?
The us versus you.
So yeah, so to catch everybody up, we're at another minute mark here. So I'm going to say, welcome to DM Writer's Room. Usually we are creating monsters and magic items. This time we're trying to take at least a good punch at coming up with the bones of a system, something that's going to scratch an itch that Spencer doesn't feel other games scratch, where we're trying to say, you get to play the main characters going through the story and their helpers, right? It's not the GM describing what those helpers do off screen in little vignettes, a trick that I could tell some stories about doing that in a previous campaign that were hilarious. Also, maybe that was also in your brain while you were going through all of this. So we are trying to find a way to sort of follow them all. Now we're talking about, like, is one of the characters we are following the villain? Now, Michael, the thing that I am always opposed to is the DM, in my opinion, should never play a character that is part of the protagonists. There should never be and I really strongly believe this, whoever's running the game should not have a character that is like one of the heroes unless they are useless. And that's usually what I do. Like, unless it is, an aide, an assistant, unless it is some random person, some aide de camp, there to clean up the fire and pick up the bags. Outside of that, I am pretty opposed to it. But the thought of the GM having actual mechanics for the villains they are playing, I'm not opposed to. Dungeons and Dragons does that. The Red Dragon doesn't just automatically hit. The only game I can think of where that doesn't happen is Monster of the Week. In Monster of the Week, all that happens is players succeed or fail. The keeper never rolls a die in that game. It is just, do the players succeed or do the players fail as you continue to play? So the question is, do we like the idea of either whoever our game master is having to narrate the nefarious actions, in which case I would add a tag to Spencer's idea. Spencer, do you want this game to be cinematic? Because that is what that would be, right? If we cut away to the villains and the players get to have knowledge, sort of dramatic irony of what the villains are doing, then we're sort of moving into a more, cinematic type thing, in which case I would be tempted to name this game Blockbuster. I'm serious. What have we laid out here? A game where you play a series of protagonists and we cut away to your helpful sidekicks as they try to influence the story as we build to a large finale. You could literally say, if the concept for this game is, this is a summer blockbuster, I don't think that is a bad idea. But so what do you think? Is that a direction that you like, or does that get away from something that you like about this particular thought?
I think cinematic 100%. I like that. I'm sort of pulling back on playing the enemy / the minions for the players, because I think that it pulls away from some of the suspense and scariness when you are enacting those things. So having that go back to the GM, I think, is fine.
James has just taken the opposite tack, saying the protagonist, in uphill battle, they can see the future, they know the danger, but no one believes them. So the thought that you give those vignettes and sort of write into the game that, like, what is going on. You are constantly getting updates and, like, your system is working. It's just you are still grinding against everything else. I think that is something of an inevitability. It's hard to kind of mechanize, but I do think it's a good thought.
Definitely.
Yeah, we might need to take an early break. I didn't grab my drink. and I am like
Ooh.
dehydrated right now. Actually, I'm gonna just. Do you guys feel like riffing for a few minutes and then updating me with what you talk about? And I'm gonna run and grab
I
a
will
drink.
also grab my drink. We're at 30 minutes, so this is a good spot to hit
Yeah,
the pause button.
we're gonna take a super quick 5 here. We've been working on coming up with the bones of a new system. We might do this for a couple episodes. Usually when we have big ideas like this, we'll stick around with them for a little while. We're gonna do a quick like 5-minute bio break to go grab drinks. We'll be back at 8 probably 8:15. Thank you all so much for watching. Stick around. My button didn't work. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to DM Writer's Room, a show where we demystify the DMing process by coming up with monsters, magic items, and in this case, the frameworks of systems, live. We have been working on a game inspired by Spencer's desire to play multiple groups of characters at the same time. At first, we were using the sort of Dracula story as a main frame, which I think makes sense, and we have slowly started to move more and more in this kind of cinematic direction where you are in one place and then cutting away to another and then cutting away to another, leading us to a sort of, like big, movie feel, which I think is pretty interesting. Seeing as most other games are kind of trying to replicate the feeling of a book, right? Of like a long, like flowing story narrative. This is something that is a little bit choppier, which I don't think is a problem. So we have this idea that we want the protagonists, the main squad fighting an uphill battle, trying to succeed. And then we have the long shot, a crew that is attached that has almost no chance of succeeding, but if they do, will shift the game. And then we have the B squad or the researchers. We have people doing work that is important, but not necessarily threatening, that will change things if they can find out, if they can kind of discover the truth. So 3 very different approaches. I think there's a pretty interesting through line here, though. So I think it's time to get into a little bit of the mechanics. Now, obviously, to me, I don't imagine that what you thought that we are thinking that this is a game where you play one session as the protagonists, one session as the long shots. So it's going to be kind of cutting between. The first thing I feel the need to address, right? What do we want that transition to feel like? Do we want it to feel like, namely, right, what is coming to my mind is it a sharp cutaway where we are in one session following like one story and cutting back and forth between the two groups, which could make things kind of confusing, right? The benefit of doing that is it lets you build the tension of cutting away and they don't know what happens, but obviously the players are going to know what happens, because they are going to play that next part of the action, unless we really want to stick with that like cinematic cue, in which case we will build in a mechanic where the camera cuts away and you will jump ahead in time a couple minutes.
It would be fun.
So is that something that we want to do, or do we more like the idea of play as one group for a little while, play as another group for a little while, play as the third group for a little while, play as the primary group for a while?
I know for me as like a DM, I would prefer the second, because I would say I've prepared this section for the next 2-3 sessions, and then we'll go on to B plot, we'll go on to Bruiser, whatever, for a session later on, and then we can continue on that way. And as a player, it can be a little bit confusing jumping between character sheets. So I could see either way, because on the other hand, jumping for suspense purposes makes sense. Where in session, something cool is happening, you cut to the next scene, I think is interesting.
So I think this is the real breakdown then. Option 1, full character sheet for every character. The side characters are well flushed out. They have a wide diversity of things they can do during the game. And they are on par with the protagonist character. It is just that their fate and their odds of success are different. That is option 1. That would be, we're going to play the main game for 3 sessions, and then we're going to play 1 session as the Bruisers. And then we're going to play the main game for 3 sessions, and then we're going to play 1 session as the Researchers, which I do think would work. And then option 2, if it's cut to the Researchers, cut back to the main group, cut to the long shot, cut back to the main group, then this is my main character. I have a full sheet and a full range of abilities. And then this is my long shot character. That sheet is 1/3 the length, and is far simpler, right? So that would be very similar to the Survivors mechanic, and would be made to be something that you could hop into and out of with pretty much nothing, right? It would just, everything would fit on, I have a stack of them somewhere. Yeah, everything would fit on like a big note card, and that's that character versus your like multi-page protagonist with a backstory. Yeah, exactly.
I think if we're going if we're going with that option, I think a cool way to do it would just be it's just 2 pages. Front page is protag, and then flip it backside first half is long shot, second half is plot B.
That's pretty cool.
Can I
I
say
actually
something?
really like that.
We also, now this is a concern that you at home don't have to worry about, but that we here at Foolhardy Press do. Can I say something? Marketable. That's
Super
marketable.
That's great.
If you have a duplex
Uh,
printer, you're 2/3 of the way there, kiddo.
You're
You
done.
cut away, flip the page over. Marketable. But so,
I would even argue 2/3 of the back half could be the B plot characters. I don't remember what we named them. And then
The
1/3
researchers.
can be the long shot.
Mhm.
Don't need a lot for the long shot characters.
I like the idea of really just being like, this person is so screwed.
they're boned. Researchers, that was
Oh.
the title.
Yeah, so James has said we have interestingly created a kind of rock, paper, scissors mechanic. We have long shots, researchers, and protagonists up against minions, thralls, and Nosferatu.
Yeah.
James
Yeah.
James is building his game sense right alongside us as we
it's
move
going
through
crazy.
these. Very, very solid connection there. You should freelance a little bit if you keep this up. Okay. So are you, Spencer, it sounds like you got a little whipped up in the mechanic. This is largely your idea. I am here to, I guess mostly as an editor, it feels like this time. Which of those two do you prefer? When you think about multiple full character sheets, you pause, you play them for a session, you pause, you return. Or it is a full sheet, 2/3 of a sheet, third of a sheet, and it is cut to them, cut back. Cut to them, cut back, and we lean into that like uncertainty where even the players don't always know what is going on off screen. Do you have a lean there?
I think my lean is the more chaotic cut to a scene, cut away, cut back, cut to the next. I think that if you're playing like a really long form game, it could be you do a couple sessions, a session, a couple sessions, back and forth. But the image of like, we're doing this in 6 hours. This story is going to be told by the end of that 6 hours. Jumping around is more the platonic ideal of how I see this game going.
And now my most important question. Are we thinking, because it is actually, I think, a really good way to think of it. Is it full sheet, half sheet, or is it full sheet, 2/3, 1/3?
I think full sheet 2/3, 1/3. I think that's hilarious.
It's super funny. I was just thinking about it. There's only one small problem to it. Especially with like the long shots, they're dying a lot. It's gonna be tough to change that out if like there's a Reds and Pen.
Well, I've got a great news. I have the best news anyone's ever had. You see,
Pencil.
a couple hundred years ago, somebody came up with a good old pencil. Yeah, if you're writing on character sheets in pen, I can't help you, brother. You
Just
are a
put out more.
lost cause. I've got nothing.
I just
for you.
want to make sure that was all right with you guys. And
Hello.
Ooh.
earthquake.
Stream just heard a really loud noise, and I just hit my hand super hard.
Mm.
What's up? My desk chair. This is a little fun. We're gonna do a little fun. Welcome to Banter Talk. This is our podcast within a live show. My office chair I bought at a massive like thrift store. It is no joke, like 100 years old. It is from like a closed GE plant. It's a great chair. There's only one problem. The stick that keeps it from leaning back slowly wiggles out of its thing, and so every now and again I lean a little bit and the whole chair goes whack and I slam my hand into the bottom of my desk. So I apologize for the audio snafu you just had to go through. So full page, 2/3 of a page, third of a page on the back, and then Michael brought up the concern of being able to sort of easily do this. I think the real answer to that is if you are somebody that is like really messy and is going to have trouble, don't actually put it on the back of your main character page. Print out 2 pages and put it on a secondary sheet. That way you can swap it out pretty easily. We could also make it so that genuinely, if we keep it simple enough, the long shots might be the kind of thing that you can write out. Right? And not necessarily have to print, although most people like to print and fill boxes because that's what they expect in an RPG. Okay, so I think that's really great. It also tells me about the investment in each story, right? Protagonists very invested, and then researchers secondary, and then this sort of background level. What it specifically makes me think of, I don't know if you intended this is the exact breakdown of like every Blade movie. Every Blade movie does
crazy?
this. You've got Blade going through doing his Blade stuff, and then you always have somebody in the background that's like, I'm researching silver guns. And you're like, awesome, thank you for researching silver guns. And then
God.
way in the background, you always have like a sidekick character getting into stuff that inevitably dies by the end of the Blade movie. So I think we've really tapped into a pretty powerful, consistent
What's great is
feature
because
here.
this is Forged in the Dark, we could just call it Blade. Blade in the Dark.
Hilarious. Yeah, no, so that is my next question. And this is one that I'm open to either way. Do we want to riff on another system, look at something like Blades in the Dark, or do we want to put on our thinking caps and see what it looks like if we don't sort of reference somebody else's mechanics? In which case, we're going to have to decide what is on-stream and off-stream talk, because my first question, unfortunately, is like, what are the dice? My first question is dice.
Have we ever made a Forged in the Dark system?
No, we've never played.
We've been doing this
We've-
shit for like 3 years. So
We've played
I would forget.
3 like short games in that system off stream. We've never played on stream. And no, we've made a Powered by the Apocalypse system, and we have made a Morkborg, so I guess Powered by Borg system. We have yet to sort of head in the direction of the Forged in the Dark, which is mostly about playing interchangeable characters that can come and go, that are united by what they can do together. So it is a game that is highly defined by like, this is what we do as a team, and that's how we succeed. We want the team to succeed. Our individual characters can come and go, they can go to jail, they can die. We want the team to succeed. So I do think there is an element, obviously, when I said that just now, that is connected to this, right? Where it's like, we need the main objective completed. Everything else that happens. The main difference is it really does not do this thing where you have multiple groups running at the same time. It's more about changing out individuals.
I think Go Blades Forged in the Dark. I'm all for that. Developing a brand new system, I don't think that this idea really necessitates a specific rebuild.
I would say from a game design perspective, it would merit it, because the questions you're always supposed to ask yourself is, what do I want to do in this game? How do I want this game to feel? Answer those 2 questions first. Then go look at other games. Is there another game doing that? If the answer to that is no, then it is, you may want to consider making an entirely new system. That is when you consider that for the first time, right? If you don't, that's how you end up with, D&D and Pathfinder and Roll20 and D20 Neutral and, 50 games that are all in sort of the same category. I can hear somebody right now sprinting towards my house at full speed to say that Pathfinder 2 is really different than D&D. That's true. Pathfinder 1E was just 3rd edition, and I will not have people rewrite history about that one.
I think my argument is, I think Blades in the Dark, Forged in the Dark, is doing close enough to what we want that a hack of that system will make more sense than trying to develop an entirely new system, where we add in several mechanics for party swap and potentially swapping characters in and out. Like, if a bruiser does really well and your protag gets killed, I could see that bruiser being elevated to protag position. But it's still primarily about separate groups doing things.
And for the record, the Forged in the Dark official tagline is, you do not need to use any particular mechanics, which is funny. Some game systems do require you to do things. I think Powered by the Apocalypse has some stuff that you are like supposed to do. I could be wrong about that. I'd have to double check. They have a big system document, which makes me think that's true. The creator Forged in the Dark, if memory serves, for the record, I think it's Evil Hat Studios, does that one. Go take a peek, man. That game bangs. Was very specifically like, if it is in any way inspired by us, you can say that. I don't care. Like, his line on that is pretty hysterical. Is like, I'm really indifferent about this, which is a funny take for a game developer to take. Okay, cool. So we have this sort of composite build here, which means that we need to come up with some protagonist teams. And then we need to come up with some researcher teams. I'm smelling multiple episodes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because we're almost at an hour now.
And then we need to come up with some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 long shot teams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what this is really making me think of? Love, Death, and Robots. You ever watch that show?
I only watched a little bit of that. I watched a couple episodes.
So
I've watched a lot of it.
it is basically just a string of long shots. Like stuck together. It's like 20 of them in a row, and it's like, let's see who makes it. And so I think, Spencer, I think that would be great watching for you to get into this a little bit. Yeah, because some of those are really good. And they fit specifically this, where it's like, that is who you are watching. You are watching the long shots. You are not watching the protagonists play, which I think is always kind of fun. All right, so if that's the case, then, first of all, we all need to go take a look at Blades in the Dark and see what of that system we like and don't like. I know for a fact you all own a copy because you are all members of the it's not Memorial yet because I am still alive, but for now I will call it the Ethan Kip Memorial TTRPG Google Drive, where all the books I buy land in. So we can all take a look at that. But so we need to come up with these teams, which means we get to come up with really fun stuff like bases. Where do they operate from? And for each of these groups, that can be true. So it sounds like let's take Nosferatu as our example. For the record, this is a really strong start for a system. We have like a good idea of what a game looks like. Normally, that's the hard part. So if I was to do this in Nosferatu, Group A, I would call their team Hunters. You are here to tackle a supernatural threat. Cool. Our research team, I think our B squad team would be the researchers. Find the secret before everything is lost. And then our long shot would be the survivors or the ship. It would be, you are stranded, you are alone. So for a great example, what I think is a group of long shots trying to survive is the original Alien.
Yeah.
Right? The protagonists are in Aliens, the sequel. Like, they might make it. In Alien, you're like, no one's doing this. Like, no one's making it. So, specifically, I think you've nailed a mechanic that I'm going to take right away, which is if anyone survives being in the long shots, you can roll that character into a protagonist if they survive.
It would be hilarious to roll them into the B squad, the researchers, and it's like, I don't belong here, guys. But then they find a secret, they get bumped up.
Oh, so you have to that's pretty funny. Yeah, okay. So I think that's really solid. And I think we have a really good idea of what the core mechanic is. So now the next thing we would need to decide, if we want to be forged in the dark here, how much of that system. So that system is made for fast cutaways, cut backwards, cut forwards. That's what that system is built for. So I think that's pretty huge for us. And then it is a lot about, building up strain and injuries and trying to stay alive and trying to stay out of jail. I think that makes a lot of sense. That is obviously more geared towards, the protagonist, because it gives them a bunch of ways out, right? You can manage your stress, you can manage your health, you can make devil's bargains. By the way, if you're listening to us right now and you know nothing about that, I think they have a free abridged rules. You gotta take a look. That game's incredible. What's your thought?
I think
it was. Michael,
sorry,
go ahead, because I'm still thinking.
Yeah, I think it'd be a very cool idea to take not heavily, but take a good bit from that and put it in the protagonist, and then also have our own systems for researchers and long shots.
Yeah, a little bit more disconnected from how the main thing works.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
And I think that definitely makes it our own also.
Mainly because I think the long shots having the option to do flashbacks is a little self-defeating. I think
that was what I was thinking about, and thank you for sparking my memory before I forget it again.
Hey.
The protagonist sparking flashbacks makes sense. You are face to face with Nosferatu, the creature you're fighting, whatever it is, and you are about to get absolutely clobbered. The protags can call for a flashback to either the long shots or the researchers. Then the scene shifts to the researchers finding this secret, or the long shots stabbing the thing in the bat wing, and limiting its movement.
So
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think that unfortunately one of our rules at the beginning is we're gonna have to be like, this game takes 5 hours.
Yeah.
Like, you know how people say like, oh, you can do D&D in 2 hours. You cannot play this game in
That
2
is not
hours.
it.
Like, because
No.
you're gonna want to basically cut away and do like a whole mini arc,
Mhm.
and then come back. So that's
Yep.
a very different build. That's interesting. We might need to tweak it a little because it sounds like it might be a
Mhm.
little overbearing, like, but not
Yeah.
bad. Not bad.
Mhm.
The question would just be, yeah, the question is like, do we finish a story for the long shots every time? Like, every time you want a flashback, do we watch a new team of long shots die to make it happen? Do we see somebody like running with a torch through the sewers every time? Like,
Or does like one action
That
go
would-
off on the long
that would
shots?
appeal to me so much, but I don't know if it would appeal to everyone so much. Like,
It's really fun because it's giving me Helldivers 2 vibes.
it is.
Or-
It
Yeah,
definitely
you're
is.
just a number.
Yeah.
It is very funny to be like punching. Everything is resolved in one round of actions. Like, you have one round,
Yeah.
and if you can't succeed with your mechanics, the flashback doesn't work.
It fails. And the pro tags are like, we got nothing from them. And the other person's like, we never heard back. And then you get fucking walloped by Nosferatu. Yeah.
Nosferatu shows up with the head of one of the long shots, and
It's
you're like,
no! Yeah.
this could have gone better. This went poorly. Oh, all right. I'm gonna note it. I'm worried that in practice it's not gonna work.
This is playtest.
as
This is
clean.
playtest shit for sure.
Buddy, we're not even there. If it's like alpha, beta, we're not. What's before alpha? What's
Concept.
one round question mark flashbacks question mark? Great, hilarious. Oh my gosh.
It's fine.
This is
There is
also-
pre-alpha.
Can I say something right now? I'm gonna make a called shot here. I think our next campaign stream might be Blades in the Dark, just because we're talking about it
It's
so
so
much that
good.
I'm getting
It's
excited.
so good.
Okay.
I have a mechanic thought you guys might like. I call it last rites. It's for our long shots, our researchers, where it's when they die, they do not get a death save, but they get a save for like their next character gets something from this character, like a memento, a little
Something's
bonus or
passed.
something.
The B plots pass some stuff down to their next B plot.
Shout out to my
character.
unchosen one-shot idea from last stream, where you follow a sword through its many different owners across centuries.
We
Okay,
build a one shot into this game.
genuinely, that's what we're talking about. We're talking
Yeah,
about like
we
sticking
are.
a one-shot in this game somewhere. Okay, so I think that's really interesting, and I like the idea. Maybe there is one of the options you can take when you make a long shot is like a relic of the last long shot is extremely funny. I also like the idea, what I thought you were going to say. I love the idea that one of the things the long shots can do, if it is so obvious they are going to lose, if they have like high risk, high reward, but then they can get a moderate reward for like pulling the pin on a grenade or something. Like,
The martyrdom trait.
yeah, one of the, oh no, traits martyrdom. Yeah, see, this is perfect. We're getting somewhere now. Yeah, no, so I think that works, right? The main characters get a full character sheet. The long shots pick from a list of traits. You get like, you pick 3 out of a list of like 20 traits. One of them is martyrdom. You can automatically force a success by killing your character at any point. Like, for those of you who don't,
Yeah.
it makes me think of the Predator franchise. Also, is like right up the middle of this. Specifically, one of the newer ones called Predators. Like, somebody heroically sacrifices themselves every 10 seconds in Predators. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Every time they turn around, somebody's like, I'll hold them off. But it's constant. It's everybody is like, I'll do it. And you're like, again?
And it works for like 7 seconds. It just doesn't do anything. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, so we should go for about 5-6 more minutes here. We're trying to, the goal for the show is always for us to stick somewhere in the hour marker. We used to do 2 hours, but by the end of it, we were like, should his shirt be blue? Like, it was we'd get in the weeds too hard after that much.
His
that
name
much
is
at once.
Flynn.
It's Flurbo McGee.
Yeah, if you want to listen to us be like, what do we name this class? And for us to be like, we'll spend 10 minutes on this. People will listen to that. Go watch some of those earlier episodes.
Listen to the old ones.
So if that's what the long shots do, right? They try to survive. It's like one round, absolute smash and grab. Flashbacks connect to them. They get things like martyrdom. So like they're designed for that. My question then is like, the researchers are clearly a step up from that. And then the protagonists more so. So if you would flash back to the long shots, what do you do to the researchers? Is it part of like experience and leveling up? Is it maybe alternate pitch? Is flashbacks what the researchers do and devil's bargains is what the long shots do? Right? Because a devil's bargain in Blades in the Dark is you take a deliberately bad outcome, but you do get to technically succeed, right? Like something else horrible happens, but you still manage to succeed. Maybe that is you watch some of your allies beef it. You definitely need some relics each team is trying to find. Yeah, that's a good point, James. Protagonist, the Holy Hand Grenade, the Long Shots Excalibur, the Research, the Necronomicon. Now stop it though, because a game where the long shots... Because a move Spencer would make is me being like, you're trying to kill this guy. And Spencer's like, great. I flash back. And I'm like, what do you flash back to? And Spencer's like, the man in the bar from 3 sessions ago is deep in the catacombs beneath the Vatican. He's looking for Excalibur. And I go, no, wait. And he's like, a blade that can kill Dracula. I'm like, no. It's such a move. I love that.
That's fucking hilarious.
And that's a perfect example of what the long shots do, right? The long shots are trying to do something that you're
insane.
like, why?
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
So the question where I think we need to circle back to is, when are things shifted? Do the pro tags call for a flashback? Does the keeper GM call for a flashback? What do they call them, Blades in the Dark, by the way?
A flashback?
No. The person in charge of the story. Because I don't remember.
I can tell you.
We'll call him the keeper for now.
For now, yeah,
But-
yeah.
But
I
that's
think,
sort of the base conceit that we're trying to figure out. What were you thinking?
yeah, I think on a flashback that works perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But
I would give
don't know
anything
how-
for my big RPG bookcase to be about 2 feet closer to my desk.
Yeah.
But I'd like it to be. I don't know how often flashbacks would be going on, so I think it'd be fun to do just have one other thing that triggers that swap. I don't know what that trigger would be, but I think one more would be good.
They're the game master.
Okay.
Oh, all right. Sure.
This is a game, for the record, that I've wanted to get these jabronis to play for so long that it is in fact tabbed for play. This
James
is a
said
level.
any character death.
This is a level of desperation from a DM that is worrying. If you see them show up and they're like, I tabbed that new RPG, you might just want to let them play. We did. I remember Spencer, I got so desperate. I think Spencer and I played a 1 GM, 1 player
one
game of Blades in the Dark. Because we were the only ones that were like, Michael at that point was when you were fully underwater. Like you weren't even playing on other things yet. Because I had just bought it at like the mall. And Spencer was like, no one will play. I remember that. So you're talking about when would a character die?
No.
No.
When would the flashbacks occur?
Yeah,
Is
when
it
do we
only
swap?
Pro tag directed? Is it directed via like character death, like James said, something like that?
Yeah, so Blades in the Dark, if we are going with something very heavily inspired by this system, is similar to Monster of the Week. The GM pretty rarely does anything. They are mostly responding to what the players do. So in that case, the players would always call for a flashback. I almost just did a big hiccup in the microphone. I like the idea that you could do something on a character death, right? Like a devil's bargain to do something to like have somebody save the day to get to them. Yeah, see, I'm leaning in the devil's bargain direction because I like the idea of somebody being like, your character like gets stabbed and starts to fall out of the window and you're like, I'm gonna do a long shot. And it's like a couple of the helpers trying to fight their way through just in time for one of them to leap out and catch you. And if they all die, they don't do it, I think is extremely funny. There is something like really good in being like, you can't get the door open. You failed the check. You tried to push it. Your researcher failed. And you're like, I have a long shot.
I'm gonna use Nosferatu again because this is
because the long shot is always, it's like the key won't work, and then the door just opens, and a blood-soaked character with an arrow in their back like falls to their knees and then falls forward dead.
The Nosferatu example is at one point the real estate
Spoilers
agent
for
that we're
Nosferatu.
following. Spoilers for Nosferatu. The real estate agent we're following does go to Nosferatu's castle. And he gets, cursed and everything's super fucked up. But he attempts to flee, and he falls out of the window into the water, and the river washes him up somewhere. And then the long shot crew would be the nuns that grab him and save him from the wolves that Nosferatu has and brings him to the cathedral so he can rest. And then he gets out of there.
The thought,
that's a long shot.
Playing a bunch of nuns fighting wolves in the woods is so good.
Exactly. So I think that the Devil's Bargain long shot call, I think, is great.
So mechanically, we probably wouldn't call them those things. It would just be, I'm going to do a long shot. And then if it was like, we're trying to do this thing, I want to have a weapon that can hurt him, flashback. And that's when we would get the researchers, like, mixing jars and like heading off to, secret places and trying to break into Dracula's tomb to get some dirt or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've got the basic mechanics. We know when we use each one. This is where I say, if we can assign some kind of mechanic to this, this is time for our first playtest. Legitimately, when you are in game creation, would be something like this. We have just enough to limp, like, forward. I literally, what's funny? It's been so long. I do not remember the Blades in the Dark dice mechanic. Let's look that up and then probably call it there. I'm looking at our time here. We're just about done.
It was 2d6, but I honestly don't know either.
You roll several 6-sided die at once, and you read the single highest result. If the highest die is a 6, it is a full success. If it is a 4 or 5, it is a partial success. If it is a 1 through 3, it is a bad outcome. And you roll based on your different skills. That's interesting. So, like, let me get to...
So when you're developing your real estate pro tag.
So for instance, the Leech, a saboteur and technician, has 2 in Tinker. So if you describe an action that has to do with tinkering, you roll 2d6. And if one of them is a 6, it is a full success. If one of them is a 4 or 5, it is a mixed success. If one of them is a 1 through 3, it is a failure. I think that's pretty good. And it's just that the protagonists get a lot of extra skills. And the long shots get like those base numbers, and they're done.
Hell yeah.
I think that would work really well. I'm going to probably keep dice mechanic.
So what do we want to bring next week?
I think next week we need to focus in on the protagonists, and we each need to come prepared with our favorite Blades in the Dark mechanic.
Okay.
I'm not saying read the whole thing. The pinch on Blades in the Dark, really, another TTRPG terms, the pinch is the pages you need to read to play the game. It's often not very much, so I can tell you right now, the pinch for this game is basics, which is like 20 pages right at the beginning. That's what you need to play. And then your pinch for being somebody who runs the game is those 20 pages plus 20 pages of how to run the game. That's the pinch. So if you wanted to just read that, that's fine. I'll probably give this whole thing a thumb over in this next week. But so everybody come with your favorite Blades in the Dark mechanic that you want to use in a Forged in the Dark game. And then I think we need to go, okay, protagonists. What are the different types? Is this always a horror game? Because it sounds like you are really pushing a like monster hunting horror angle. I will say from a like game publishing perspective, that is a weaker product, but one that it is easier to do art for and to get people interested in, where it's like it's a horror game. What we could also do is the like horror version of this game fantasy version of this game, right? You can sort of iterate on those, in which case...
DLCs, baby.
Well, no, so in that case, we would come out with something a lot less like this, and we would come out with something closer to... You know, I have a couple up there. You can just barely see them. These, like, where are they? I'm trying to point to the right place. Yeah, do you see these, like, little pamphlet-sized games right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Which
like...
we're also more apt to do anyways, if we're being for real.
This is actually really interesting. I'm going to bring this up, so I'm going to throw in a little fun D&D history lesson from an upcoming video for us. I spent a long time in the last week and a half researching old game sets for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons for a video that you guys can watch soon. And everything they used to sell, for the most part, came in packets. Came in like cheaper magazine style printouts that were stapled together. The like big hardcovers are a pretty much strictly Wizards of the Coast, I want to make as much money as I can jump. They are like really late game, which I thought was very interesting. Most of the classic adventures for games like D&D were a stapled together set of rules, and a box would come with like 5. So that you could be like, this is the one I open for this stuff, this is the one I open for that stuff, this is the one it's a direction I would be pretty keen to lean in.
All right.
So
Cool
we have
fact.
our tasks. I think that, I mean, I'm excited. I
It
wanna
is a very
play
cool
the game.
concept.
No, James has just suggested Nosferatu is a special action, a murder of crows. He can just not take an action against the long shots, and one of them dies. Just if there's 6 of them, just roll a d6. You die if your number comes up. It's so funny. Okay. All right. I think that's really strong. So thank you so much for watching now and in the future as we come up with, hopefully you're watching this in retrospect, zines. Thank you, James. That is the word I was looking for.
I called him a quarto. What am I talking about?
You're talking about going to Shakespeare school, you nerd.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I've
great.
never heard that word before.
I think that's really solid. Okay, cool. So thank you so much for tuning in. This is us coming up with this not one page RPG, but this RPG live. Hopefully you're watching from the future when we've won many awards and made millions of dollars and are talking about it, and you've decided to see where it all traced back to. Thank you so much for tuning into DM Writer's Room. We love doing this show. We come up with monsters, magic items, game systems lately, one-page RPGs, and all kinds of fun stuff live. If you want the quickest turnaround, watch our one-page RPG episodes, and so far, at least with the more recent ones, within a few months, you can turn around and buy the product. We are already well underway to getting Resonance, our second one that we worked on enough to sort of get publishable, up and out. A salute to Corner Critters, a game that probably ain't gonna happen. One of our first ones we came up with, a little rougher around the edges than these last 2 have been, but still with a fun heart to it. You can check out 3 streams on Foolhardy Press. We've hit a couple of roadblocks recently, but we almost always make a post when we miss a session. It's just, there's a lot of us. We live in different states. Things can kind of fall out of form there. We try to pretty much always build up try to always build up a decent amount of that. On Sundays, you can catch Game Masters Masters of Games, where we play video games that we are trying to master or have already mastered. We played Marvel Rivals a few weeks ago. Now we're headed back towards Baldur's Gate 3. Who knows where we will go from there. On Mondays, you can catch The Party Makes Things Worse. Right now, I'm running a game in the system Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, specifically the 2024 stuff, where we are playing the Song of the Reliquary, a sort of horror-tinged adventure. The party is about to hopefully not die to a giant iron construct called a Bastille. I guess we'll see how that goes. And then on Tuesdays, you can catch DM Writer's Room, where we demystify the DMing process by coming up with stuff live. Sometimes lore, sometimes settings, sometimes games. Check us out on TikTok and YouTube, where Spencer posts all kinds of stuff. And what's the weird new one?
Instagram.
Aren't you on Red Note too?
I'm on Red Note. That's not getting updated in the same way. If you really want it, Instagram is where we're posting things when TikTok inevitably.
So YouTube and Instagram are the mains. Please like and subscribe and all that jazz. And then TikTok, depending on how things continue to shake out, we keep heading in that direction. Check us out on itch.io to catch The Last Thanksgiving, a turkey-tinged tale of vengeance. Super fun one-pager we came up with where you throw eggs at each other to complete actions. And soon, Resonance, a mech RPG. We have some playtesting to do, a little bit more cleaning up, and then that should be ready to go in the next... I'm hoping next few weeks. Let's call it the next few months.
Yeah.
Let's call it the next few months, just in case. And then, of course, you can check us out on DriveThruRPG. Our first major adventure, it is a quick level 1 adventure called The Lich's Dollhouse is up there. We're working on some other exciting stuff to go up there in the near future. But, of course, those are much bigger projects for a much more complicated game. So maybe don't hang around for those too much. We'll let you know when they come out. Did I miss anything?
One more thing that we've never actually referenced in our sign-off. Scheduling Conflicts, our premiere one-shot series that only airs when other shows fail to, is a way that you can get bite-sized actual play content from us, because they're all one-shots, up to like maybe a 3-shot, rarely. So when we have people cancel but we still want to play something, we do that on our stream nights. So if you want to watch just a one-shot of us playing random stuff, do that. We got Monster of the Week, we got D&D, we got a few other things on there.
And
so
for the record, I would like to recommend some specific scheduling conflicts. What Lies Beneath, the one that we just did, was really fun. That was Monster of the Week, delving into a Wild West themed kind of adventure. That was a really good time. I say this with all the love and having had a lot of fun. I would skip the Crimson Octagon unless you just love our personalities.
I had fun with that.
That game was fun. That game was a mess. So if you just want to like laugh along with us as we make jokes, it was way too late in the day. We were all super tired from that week. But if you want to watch
playing
that
a guy
one, you can.
called Mason Fatham.
Spencer.
So
that was a really silly one. And then what was the one before that? Falling Leaves. Loved Falling Leaves. Yeah. Falling Leaves was joy. And then there's a level 21 shot in there too, which also got pretty silly. So tune into those if you want to catch a couple of one-shots from us. Scheduling Conflicts is a show I run. It runs, again, when other shows get canceled. Scheduling Conflicts is what we play. Thank you all so much for watching. We're going to catch you on the next one. For the 2 people that just showed up, feel free to watch the rest of this. We had a really good time working on some exciting stuff that hopefully we'll keep building on the next few weeks. Thank you all so much for watching. Peace out.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell.